The Academy's morning light filtered through the massive dome that protected New Geneva Station from the void of space. Maya Chan walked through the corridors with her head down, clutching her data pad closer to her chest. The rankings had been posted again, and, once more, her name sat at the very bottom of the list. "Dead last again, Terran," sneered HFY, his crystalline skin catching the light as he blocked her path. The crystalline was nearly 7 feet tall, his body made of living diamond that could withstand pressures that would crush most beings. "Perhaps you should consider a career in food service instead of galactic defense." Maya kept walking, trying to ignore the laughter that followed. The Galactic Defense Academy was the most prestigious military school in the known universe, drawing cadets from hundreds of worlds. Every species sent their best and brightest, their strongest and most gifted. And then, there was Maya, the only human in her class, representing a species that most considered barely worth notice. The Academy had been built around the concept of the Great Trial, an ancient test that determined a being's worthiness for command. At its center sat the Hammer of Ethon, a weapon forged by the long-extinct predecessors. The hammer was locked in a gravity field so intense that it warped space around it. For thousands of years, cadets from every species had attempted to lift it. Only a few had ever succeeded, and those who did were marked for greatness. Maya entered the combat training hall where her classmates were already gathered. The instructor, Commander Thale of the Zephyrian Empire, stood before a holographic display showing various military scenarios. His 4 arms moved gracefully as he manipulated the images, his blue-scaled skin gleaming under the lights. "Today we study the Battle of Kepler's Edge," Commander Thale announced. "Who can tell me why the Terran forces were so easily defeated?" Several hands shot up. Vextar, a hulking brutarian whose species was bred for war, spoke first. "The humans were weak, Commander. They lacked the physical strength and mental fortitude needed for modern warfare. Their technology was primitive," added Cilia, a techno-organic whose cybernetic implants allowed her to interface directly with computer systems. "They relied too heavily on crude ballistic weapons and outdated tactics." Commander Thale nodded approvingly. "Correct. The human military was disbanded shortly after their integration into the galactic community. Their role now is primarily in support services and basic labor." His 4 eyes turned toward Maya. "Perhaps Cadet Chen can enlighten us about her species' limitations?" Maya felt every gaze in the room turn toward her. Heat crept up her neck as she struggled to find words. We weren't prepared for the scale of galactic warfare. Our military doctrine was designed for planetary conflicts, not space battles involving multiple star systems." "An honest assessment," Commander Thale said, though his tone suggested disappointment rather than approval. "This is why humans are ranked so low in the galactic hierarchy. Your species simply lacks the natural advantages that evolution has granted others." The class continued with tactical simulations. Maya watched as her classmates demonstrated abilities that seemed impossible by human standards. Vextar lifted weights that would require industrial machinery on Earth. Cilia calculated complex orbital mechanics in her head faster than any computer. HFY's crystalline body shrugged off energy blasts that would vaporize steel. When it came time for Maya's turn in the simulation, she piloted her virtual ship with careful precision, using cunning and strategy rather than brute force or natural abilities. She managed to complete the scenario, but her time was the slowest in the class. "Adequate," Commander Thale noted as he recorded her score. "But adequacy will not save lives in real combat, Cadet Chen." After class, Maya made her way to the Academy's central chamber, where the Hammer of Ethon waited. It was a daily ritual for her, though she couldn't explain why she kept returning to stare at the ancient weapon. The hammer itself was beautiful in its simplicity, a long handle of what looked like ordinary metal topped with a geometric head that seemed to shift and change as she looked at it. The gravity field around it was visible as a shimmer in the air, bending light and creating an almost hypnotic effect. Warning signs in dozens of languages surrounded the platform, cautioning that only authorized personnel should approach during official trials. "Still dreaming of glory, little Terran?" Maya turned to find Kethmore approaching, his sleek reptilian form moving with predatory grace. The Saurian was one of the top-ranked cadets, his species known for their intelligence and natural telepathic abilities.
Just studying it, Maya replied quietly. Kethmore's scaled lips curled into what might have been a smile. Do you know the physics behind the field?
The hammer exists in a state of artificial gravitational compression. The field generates roughly 50,000 times standard gravity. Even my people, with our enhanced bone density and muscle structure, cannot approach it.
I know, Maya said.
Then, you understand how foolish your little visits are. No being in recorded history has ever lifted that hammer without first achieving at least a Class 7 ranking in physical capabilities.
You barely register as Class 2. Maya nodded, still staring at the weapon.
She had read the histories, studied the physics, understood the impossibility of what lay before her. The hammer of Ethon wasn't just a test of strength, it was a test of worthiness that transcended physical power. The gravity field was somehow sentient, responding not just to force but to something deeper.
The predecessors left it as a challenge, Kethmore continued, warming to his lecture.
Only those destined for true leadership can overcome its defenses. It has chosen generals who united star systems, admirals who ended wars, leaders who shaped the course of galactic history.
What if that's not what it's looking for anymore? Maya asked suddenly.
Kethmore's head tilted, his telepathic senses probing her thoughts before she could shield them.
What do you mean? Maya wasn't sure how to explain the feeling that had been growing stronger each day.
Every time she looked at the hammer, she felt something calling to her, not demanding strength or power, but searching for something else entirely.
Nothing, she said. Just a thought.
Dangerous habit, thinking above your station, Kethmore warned. The Academy tolerates your presence because the Galactic Council demands diversity, but don't mistake tolerance for acceptance.
Know your place, Terran. As Kethmore slithered away, Maya remained before the hammer.
Around her, the Academy buzzed with activity. Cadets from dozens of species trained in arts of war that spanned the galaxy. Each brought natural gifts that seemed to make them born for this life: enhanced strength, telepathic communication, technological symbiosis, or simple physical resilience that dwarfed anything humanity possessed.
Maya thought about her own journey to this place.
She had been selected not because she was exceptional, but because someone had to represent humanity in the Academy's diverse student body. Earth's government had chosen her almost at random from a pool of candidates, none of whom showed particular promise by galactic standards. Her fellow humans back on Earth lived comfortable lives in the galactic community, working in positions suited to their limited capabilities. They were researchers, artists, administrators, valuable contributors to galactic society, but not warriors.
Not leaders.
Not the kind of beings who lifted ancient weapons and commanded fleets.
Why do I keep coming here? She whispered to herself.
The hammer offered no answer, but Maya could swear she felt something respond to her words.
A warmth that had nothing to do with the environmental systems.
A recognition that spoke to something deeper than physics or biology. She reached out slowly, her hand stopping just short of the gravity field. The space around the hammer shimmered with deadly force, but Maya found herself wondering what would happen if she tried. Not because she believed she could succeed, but because something inside her needed to know. The Academy's evening meal was served in a vast hall that accommodated the dietary needs of hundreds of species. Maya sat alone at a table designed for humanoid beings, picking at synthetic proteins while around her, creatures consumed everything from liquid metals to gaseous compounds.
Mind if we join you? Maya looked up to find two cadets standing nearby with their meal trays.
One was Rindel, an Aquarian whose blue skin and gill slits marked her as a Waterworld native. The other was Boomtar, a stocky Terralite whose rocky exterior and glowing core made him look like a walking mountain.
Sure, Maya said, surprised by the company. Most cadets avoided her unless they needed someone to feel superior to.
Rindal sat gracefully, her movements flowing like water. We wanted to talk to you about something we observed during today's simulation.
My terrible performance? Maya asked with a weak smile.
No, Boomtar rumbled, his voice like grinding stone.
Your tactical thinking. You solved the scenario differently than anyone else. Maya blinked in surprise. I was the slowest. Speed isn't everything, Rindal said. You minimized casualties.
Every other cadet focused on objectives and victory conditions, but you found a path that saved lives. That's what you're supposed to do in combat, Maya said, confused.
Boomtar and Rindal exchanged glances. Most cadets here are trained from birth to think in terms of acceptable losses, Boomtar explained.
Their societies teach them that victory justifies sacrifice. But you approached the problem like every life mattered equally, Rindal added.
Even enemy lives. That's unusual. Maya had never thought about it that way.
On Earth, the concept of preserving life in warfare was fundamental to human military doctrine, even when that warfare was theoretical.
Humans had learned hard lessons about the cost of treating lives as expendable. Is that wrong? Maya asked.
Not wrong, Rindal said carefully.
Different. My people are pragmatists. We value efficiency over sentiment. Boomtar's species believes in honor through strength.
But you seem to value something else entirely.
Compassion, Boomtar said, the word sounding strange in his gravelly voice. My people have a concept for it, but we consider it a weakness in warriors.
Maya thought about that as she finished her meal. After her new acquaintances left, she found herself walking through the academy's corridors, past training rooms where cadets practiced with weapons that could shatter moons, past laboratories where they studied technologies that could remake matter itself. She ended up in the observation deck that looked out at the stars. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the vast expanse of space, dotted with the lights of ships and stations that made up the galactic community. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue world that had contributed art and music and literature to galactic culture, but little else that the universe considered important.
Can't sleep either?
Maya turned to find Commander Thale approaching, his forearms clasped behind his back. Without the formal atmosphere of the classroom, he seemed less intimidating.
Just thinking, sir, Maya replied. Commander Thale joined her at the window. About your ranking?
About purpose, Maya said after a moment.
Everyone here has a role they were born for. Zexhai will be a shock trooper. Kethmore will be intelligence.
Vexstar will lead ground assault forces.
But I don't know what I'm supposed to be.
Perhaps that's your strength,
Commander Thale said quietly. Maya looked at him in surprise. Sir? The Academy trains specialists, Cadet Chen.
We take natural abilities and enhance them, focus them, weaponize them.
But specialization creates limitations. A Brutarian thinks like a Brutarian. A crystalline approaches problems like a crystalline. And humans? Commander Thale was quiet for a long moment.
When I was young, I fought in the border wars against the Hive Collective.
Brutal conflicts that lasted decades.
We threw everything at them, our strongest warriors, our most brilliant tacticians, our most advanced weapons.
Nothing worked.
Maya waited for him to continue. The war ended when a human diplomat named Sarah Chen, perhaps a relative of yours, convinced both sides to meet. She had no special powers, no enhanced capabilities. But she understood something the rest of us missed.
What was that?
That sometimes the answer isn't to fight harder or think faster or hit with more force.
Sometimes the answer is to step back and ask why you're fighting at all. Commander Thale turned from the window. Your species may lack the obvious advantages others possess, Cadet Chen.
But you have something else. Something that might be more valuable than all the strength and speed in the galaxy. As he walked away, Maya remained at the window, staring out at the stars.
Tomorrow would bring another day of rankings, another day of being reminded that humanity was the weakest link in the galactic chain.
But, for the first time since arriving at the academy, she wondered if weakness might sometimes be its own kind of strength. The hammer of Ethon waited in its chamber, locked in gravity and mystery. And Maya found herself thinking not about lifting it through force, but about understanding what it truly wanted to find. The Academy's emergency alarms shattered the pre-dawn quiet, their piercing wail echoing through every corridor and chamber. Maya jolted awake in her small dormitory room, her heart racing as red warning lights bathed everything in crimson. Around her, she could hear the sounds of cadets mobilizing, heavy footsteps, shouted orders, and the distinctive hum of military equipment powering up. She dressed quickly in her training uniform and rushed into the hallway, where chaos reigned. Cadets from dozens of species moved with practiced efficiency, but their alien faces showed the same concern she felt. Whatever was happening, it wasn't a drill.
All cadets to emergency stations, Commander Thale's voice boomed through the Academy's communication system. This is not an exercise. Repeat, this is not an exercise.
Maya followed the flow of cadets toward the main assembly hall, her mind racing through possibilities. The Academy was one of the most secure facilities in the galaxy, protected by shields that could withstand supernova blasts and surrounded by automated defense networks that made it virtually impregnable. The assembly hall buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of cadets gathered. Maya found herself pushed toward the back, her shorter human frame easily lost among the larger alien forms. From her position, she could barely see the holographic display that materialized above the crowd. "Attention cadets," Commander Thale's voice cut through the noise. 47 minutes ago, long-range sensors detected an anomaly approaching our system. The object appears to be artificial and is moving at significant sublight velocity. The hologram shifted to show a tactical display of the Academy's star system. A red dot moved steadily toward the center, where New Geneva Station orbited a small yellow star. Numbers cascaded beside the dot: velocity, mass estimates, energy readings. Initial analysis suggests the object is approximately 2 kilometers in length and composed of unknown materials, Commander Thale continued. It does not respond to communication attempts and shows no signs of slowing despite approaching our defensive perimeter. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Maya strained to see better, catching glimpses of the tactical display between the heads and appendages of her taller classmates. The approaching object's trajectory was perfectly straight, aimed directly at the Academy. "All defensive systems have been activated," Commander Thale announced. "Academy staff are implementing emergency protocols. However, as future officers of the Galactic Defense Force, you should be aware of the tactical situation." Zexhai raised one crystalline arm. "Commander, what are the odds of hostile intent?" "Unknown, Cadet. The object's approach pattern suggests either complete disregard for our presence or a deliberate challenge to our defenses." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Academy's environmental systems. She had studied enough galactic history to know what usually happened when unidentified objects ignored standard communication protocols and approached military installations at high speed. "Sir," Vextar's deep voice boomed across the hall. "If the object is hostile, shouldn't we be preparing for combat?" "The Academy's defensive systems are more than adequate to handle any conventional threat," Commander Thale replied. "Our concern is not for the station's safety, but for what this object represents." The hologram shifted again, showing a closer view of the approaching vessel. Maya caught her breath as the image resolved. The ship, if it was a ship, looked like nothing in any database. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, but held a definite shape that reminded her of something organic. Geometric patterns covered its surface, similar to the designs on the Hammer of Ethon. "Predecessor technology," someone whispered nearby. The word sent a ripple of shock through the assembled cadets. The predecessors had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind only scattered artifacts like the hammer. Their technology was so advanced that even the most brilliant galactic scientists could barely understand its basic functions. "We cannot confirm the object's origin," Commander Thale said firmly. However, the Academy's Xenoarchaeology department has noted similarities to known predecessor artifacts. Maya's mind raced. If the approaching object was truly predecessor technology, it represented both an incredible discovery and, potentially catastrophic danger. The few predecessor devices that had been studied operated on principles that defied current understanding of physics. They could manipulate spacetime, alter matter at the quantum level, or generate energy fields that dwarfed stellar output. "All cadets are to return to your quarters and await further instructions," Commander Thale announced. "Academy security protocols are now in effect.
As the crowd began to disperse, Maya found herself moving against the flow, drawn by an impulse she couldn't explain.
Instead of returning to her dormitory, she made her way toward the central chamber where the hammer of Ethon waited.
The corridors were nearly empty now, with most cadets following orders to remain in their quarters.
Maya passed automated defense stations that hummed with deadly energy and security checkpoints where robotic sentries scanned for threats. The Academy's defensive systems were magnificent, capable of engaging entire fleets, but Maya wondered if they would be enough against whatever was approaching. She reached the central chamber to find it deserted. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows around the hammer's platform, and the gravity field seemed more intense than usual, bending light into rainbow patterns that made her eyes water. Maya approached slowly, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. The hammer seemed different somehow, as if the approaching object had awakened something within its ancient metal. The geometric patterns on its head pulsed with faint light, matching a rhythm she could feel in her chest.
"You feel it too, don't you?" Maya spun around to find an elderly human woman standing in the chamber's entrance.
She wore the robes of an academy researcher, but her presence seemed to fill the space with quiet authority.
"Professor Kim," Maya said, recognizing the head of the xenoarchaeology department.
She was one of only 3 humans on the academy staff, and Maya had seen her only in passing.
Professor Kim approached the hammer platform with slow, measured steps. "I've been studying this artifact for 20 years, Cadet Chen.
In all that time, it has never shown any response to external stimuli. But, today..." The patterns on the hammer's head pulsed brighter, and Maya felt the strange warmth she had experienced before, stronger now and more insistent.
"What do you think is happening?" Maya asked.
"I believe the approaching object is sending some kind of signal," Professor Kim replied. "Something that resonates with predecessor technology.
The hammer is responding because it recognizes whatever is coming." Maya stared at the ancient weapon. "Do you think it's dangerous?"
"Everything the predecessors left behind is dangerous, child. But danger and evil are not the same thing."
Professor Kim's weathered face showed years of study and contemplation. The predecessors were not malevolent.
Their technology suggests a civilization that had moved beyond the crude concerns that drive most galactic conflicts. The Academy shuddered suddenly, a deep vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Emergency lights flickered, and Maya heard the distant sound of defensive systems powering up to maximum capacity. "It's here," Professor Kim whispered. Through the chamber's observation windows, Maya could see the space around the Academy lighting up with weapons fire. Brilliant streams of energy lanced out from the station's defensive arrays, but they seemed to have no effect on the approaching object. The alien ship continued its steady approach, its hull rippling with patterns of light that matched the hammer's pulsing rhythm. "Our weapons aren't working," Maya said, her voice tight with fear. "I don't think it intends to fight," Professor Kim replied.
"If it wanted to destroy us, we would already be dead."
The hammer's pulsing grew stronger, and Maya found herself stepping closer to the gravity field. The deadly barrier that had held back countless beings for thousands of years shimmered before her, but she felt no fear of it. Instead, she felt a growing certainty that something was about to change.
"Professor," Maya said quietly, "what if the hammer isn't just a test of worthiness? What if it's a key?"
Professor Kim's eyes widened.
"A key to what?"
"To understanding what the predecessors really wanted." The Academy shuddered again as the alien object came to rest just outside the station's shields. Through the observation windows, Maya could see it clearly now, a vessel that seemed to exist at the intersection of technology and art, its flowing hull covered with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then, the patterns on the hammer's head blazed with light, and Maya felt something fundamental shift in the chamber around them. The gravity field flickered, its deadly intensity wavering for the first time in recorded history.
"That's impossible," Professor Kim breathed.
Maya stepped forward, her hand reaching toward the hammer. She should have been terrified, should have pulled back from the deadly field that could crush her in an instant. Instead, she felt a deep calm settling over her, as if everything in her life had been leading to this moment. The gravity field parted before her hand like water, offering no resistance as she reached toward the hammer's handle. Behind her, she heard Professor Kim gasp in shock, but the sound seemed to come from very far away. Maya's fingers closed around the hammer's handle, and the universe exploded into light and meaning around her. She felt the weight of the weapon, but it was not the crushing gravity that should have destroyed her. Instead, it was the weight of possibility, of connection, of understanding that stretched across millions of years. Images flashed through her mind, the predecessors in their final days, facing a choice that would determine the fate of all future civilizations. She saw their decision to leave behind not weapons or treasures, but tests and challenges that would only respond to beings capable of growth beyond their origins. The hammer lifted easily in her grasp, its ancient metal warm against her palm. Around the chamber, emergency lights flickered and died, replaced by a gentle glow that seemed to emanate from the weapon itself.
"Maya," Professor Kim whispered, "what do you see?" Maya turned, the hammer still in her hand, and found herself looking at the universe with new eyes. She saw the academy not as a fortress of military might, but as a gathering place for species learning to work together. She saw her fellow cadets not as competitors in some cosmic hierarchy, but as different aspects of a greater whole. And she saw the alien ship outside, waiting patiently for someone to understand its message. "I see why humans are here," Maya said softly. "We're not the weakest link. We're the bridge." The hammer pulsed with warm light, and, through the observation windows, the alien ship began to respond. Patterns of light flowed across its hull in waves, creating a display of beauty that brought tears to Maya's eyes. It was not a message of conquest or dominance, but of welcome and recognition. "It's been waiting," Maya realized. All this time, it's been waiting for someone who could understand that strength isn't about power over others. It's about bringing others together. Professor Kim stared at the impossible sight of a human holding the hammer of Ethon. "What happens now?" Maya looked at the weapon in her hands, feeling its ancient purpose flowing through her consciousness. The predecessors had not left it as a test of individual greatness, but as a key to unlock cooperation between species that might otherwise remain forever divided. "Now we learn what they really wanted us to become," she said. The Academy's communication systems crackled to life, carrying messages from across the galaxy as word spread of what had happened. For the first time in galactic history, someone had lifted the hammer of Ethon. But, more importantly, someone had understood what it truly meant to be chosen by it. Maya Chen, ranked last in her class and representing humanity's humble place in the galaxy, stood at the center of a moment that would reshape everything that came after. The Academy's central chamber had transformed into something resembling a galactic summit. Representatives from dozens of species filled the space, their varied forms creating a tapestry of color and shape that spoke to the diversity of the galactic community. Maya stood at the center of it all, the hammer of Ethon still in her hands, its gentle glow casting shifting patterns on the walls. She had not let go of the weapon since lifting it 3 days ago. Every time she tried, she felt an overwhelming sense that she was abandoning something vital. The hammer seemed to pulse with life, responding to her thoughts and emotions in ways that defied explanation. "The implications are staggering," declared Ambassador Vorthake, a towering crystalline whose diamond-hard skin refracted the hammer's light into rainbow patterns. "If a human can lift the hammer of Ethon, then our entire understanding of the galactic hierarchy must be reconsidered." Maya watched the debate swirling around her with growing unease. Since word of her achievement had spread, she had become the center of political maneuvering that made her deeply uncomfortable. Some species saw her success as proof that humans deserved higher status in the galactic community. Others argued that it was a fluke, an accident that meant nothing. "With respect, Ambassador," Professor Kim interjected from her position near the observation windows, "you're missing the point entirely. This isn't about hierarchy or status. The predecessor artifacts have never operated on such crude concepts." "Then, enlighten us, Professor," rumbled General Thexmar, a massive brutarian whose scarred hide spoke of countless battles. "What does it mean when the weakest species in the galaxy claims the greatest prize?" Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but the hammer's warm presence kept her centered. Through its connection, she could sense something that the arguing diplomats couldn't. The alien ship outside remained patient, waiting for understanding that seemed increasingly unlikely to come.
I haven't claimed anything, Maya said quietly, her voice somehow carrying clearly through the chamber despite the ongoing debates. The hammer chose me for a purpose, but I don't think that purpose has anything to do with proving human superiority. The arguments died down as attention focused on her. Maya felt the weight of dozens of alien gazes, each carrying expectations and assumptions that she didn't know how to address. Then, what is its purpose? Asked Commander Thale, his forearms folded in a gesture that suggested deep thought. Maya looked at the hammer in her hands, feeling its ancient wisdom flowing through her consciousness. Images and concepts that had no words in any galactic language pressed against her mind, trying to find expression through inadequate vocabulary. The predecessors weren't testing for strength or intelligence or any single quality, she said slowly. They were looking for someone who could see beyond the boundaries that separate us. Someone who understands that our differences are meant to be strengths, not sources of conflict. Pretty words, General Thexmar growled. But, what do they mean in practical terms? Before Maya could answer, the Academy's communication systems activated with an urgent message. Admiral Kurdash, the Saurian commander of the Galactic Defense Fleet, appeared in holographic form above the assembled crowd. I apologize for the interruption, Admiral Kurdash said, his reptilian features tense with concern. But, we have a situation that requires immediate attention. Long-range sensors have detected multiple ships approaching from the outer rim. Their configuration matches no known designs, and they appear to be moving in formation. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. The outer rim was largely unexplored, home to phenomena that defied current understanding of physics. Few expeditions that ventured there ever returned. How many ships? Commander Thale asked. 17 confirmed contacts, possibly more obscured by sensor interference. They'll reach the inner systems within 6 hours at current velocity. Maya felt the hammer pulse in her hands, its light growing brighter as new urgency filled her thoughts. Through the weapon's connection to predecessor technology, she sensed something that made her blood run cold. They're not ships, she said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. What do you mean? Admiral Kurdash asked. Maya closed her eyes, letting the hammer's ancient knowledge flow through her mind. Images of the approaching objects clarified, showing her something that defied easy explanation. They're probes, she said. Predecessor probes, sent out millions of years ago to monitor the galaxy's development. They've been waiting at the edge of known space, gathering information about how the younger races have evolved. That's impossible, Ambassador Vorthake declared. Predecessor technology was lost when their civilization fell. No, Maya said, opening her eyes to meet the ambassador's gaze. It was hidden, waiting for the right moment to return. The ship outside isn't just a messenger, it's been broadcasting a signal across the galaxy, calling the probes home. Professor Kim stepped forward, her elderly face pale with realization. If you're right, then, the predecessors planned this. They've been watching us all along, waiting to see if we were ready for, what? Maya felt the answer flowing through the hammer's connection, concepts so vast and alien that her human mind struggled to process them. For the next stage, she whispered. For unity that goes beyond anything we've achieved so far. The holographic display changed to show tactical information about the approaching probes. Each one was massive, easily the size of a small moon, and they moved with purpose that spoke of ancient intelligence still operating after eons of dormancy. Admiral, Maya said urgently, you have to call off any defensive preparations. If we fire on those probes, we'll fail the test. What test? Admiral Kurdash demanded. The same test the hammer represents. The predecessors didn't leave when their civilization ended, they evolved beyond physical existence, but they left behind challenges to see if younger races could follow their path. General Thexmar's massive fists clenched. You're asking us to trust the safety of the galaxy to untested theories. I'm asking you to trust what the hammer is telling me, Maya replied. The predecessors never used force to achieve their goals. They used understanding, cooperation, the kind of unity that transcends individual species' limitations. The chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. Maya felt the weight of galactic history pressing down on her shoulders, the knowledge that whatever happened in the next few hours would determine the fate of countless worlds.
There is another possibility, Commander Thale said quietly. What if this human is wrong? What if these probes represent a threat that we're being fooled into ignoring?
Maya felt doubt creeping into her thoughts, but the hammer's warm presence pushed it back. Through its ancient connection, she could sense the minds behind the approaching probes, vast intelligences that had watched over the galaxy's development with patience beyond mortal understanding. Then, we all die, Maya said simply. But, if I'm right, if we can pass this test, we become something greater than any single species has ever achieved. Admiral Kurdash was quiet for a long moment, his reptilian features showing the weight of command decisions that could affect billions of lives. What do you propose, Cadet Chen? Maya looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of dozens of worlds, each bringing their own perspective and capabilities to the gathering. For the first time since lifting the hammer, she began to understand why she had been chosen. We stop thinking like separate species and start acting like one people, she said. Every race here has abilities that others lack. The crystallines can withstand pressures that would crush most beings. The Saurians have telepathic abilities that could coordinate actions across vast distances. The Aquarians can process information flows that would overwhelm conventional systems. And humans? General Thexmar asked with barely concealed skepticism. Maya smiled, feeling the hammer's approval flowing through her thoughts. We see the connections that hold it all together. We understand that true strength comes from unity, not dominance. She raised the hammer above her head, its light filling the chamber with warm radiance. The predecessors weren't testing for the strongest species or the smartest or the most advanced. They were looking for beings capable of bringing others together, of seeing past surface differences to the potential that exists when diverse capabilities combine. Through the observation windows, the alien ship pulsed with responding light, its geometric patterns shifting into configurations that spoke of approval and welcome. The probes are almost here, Admiral Kurdash reported. If we're going to act on this theory, we need to decide now. Maya felt the moment stretching out like a held breath. Everything the galaxy had built, all the progress and cooperation and growth that had brought dozens of species together, hung in the balance. Send a message to every ship in the defense fleet, she said, her voice carrying the authority of the ancient weapon in her hands. Tell them to power down weapons and prepare for peaceful contact. And send a general broadcast to all member worlds, tell them that humanity has lifted the hammer of Ethon, and that the galaxy is about to change in ways we can barely imagine. Admiral Kurdash hesitated for one more moment, then nodded. It will be done. May the ancestors of all our species guide us through what comes next. As orders went out across the galaxy, Maya stood in the chamber's center, feeling the weight of the hammer and the hopes of countless beings pressing against her consciousness. Through the weapon's ancient connection, she sensed the approaching probes adjusting their course, no longer moving like warships but like messengers bringing word of humanity's final test. The galactic community was about to discover what the predecessors had always known, that the greatest strength lay not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to unite. And, at the center of it all stood Maya Chen, the human who had been ranked lowest in her class, holding a weapon that would reshape the meaning of power itself. The first predecessor probe emerged from hyperspace like a mountain given life, its massive form dwarfing the largest ships in the galactic defense fleet. Maya watched through the Academy's observation windows as more probes followed, their ancient hulls bearing geometric patterns that matched the hammer in her hands. 17 total, just as Admiral Kurdash had reported, but their presence seemed to fill the entire star system with quiet power. Fleet reports all weapons powered down as ordered, Commander Thale announced, his voice tight with the strain of trusting in theories that could not be proven until tested. But Admiral Kurdash requests permission to maintain defensive shields. Maya shook her head, feeling the hammer's guidance flowing through her thoughts. No shields. The predecessors need to see that we trust completely, that we've moved beyond the fear that has limited us for so long. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched in tense silence as their carefully built defenses stood down in the face of unknown power. Maya understood their fear, but she also felt something else through the hammer's connection, a sense of approaching completion, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath before taking a step into an uncertain but promising future.
Cadet Chen, Professor Kim said quietly, are you receiving any communication from the probes?
Maya closed her eyes and let her consciousness flow along the pathways the hammer had opened in her mind. Immediately, she was flooded with impressions that transcended language or conventional thought. The probes were not just machines, they were repositories of predecessor consciousness, ancient minds that had been watching the galaxy's development for millions of years. They're pleased, Maya said slowly, struggling to translate concepts that had no equivalent in any current language. The younger races have grown beyond their expectations. We've achieved cooperation that the predecessors thought might take millions more years to develop. What do they want from us? Asked Ambassador Vorthake, her crystalline form reflecting nervous light patterns. Maya felt the answer flowing through the hammer like warm water, bringing understanding that made her smile despite the tension in the chamber. They don't want anything from us, she said. They want to give us something. The next step in galactic evolution. The chance to join them in ways we haven't imagined yet. The largest probe, easily the size of a small moon, began to move closer to the Academy. As it approached, patterns of light cascaded across its hull, creating displays of impossible beauty that brought tears to the eyes of beings who had never known such artistic expression could exist. It's beautiful, whispered Rindel, the Aquarian cadet who had shown Maya kindness when others hadn't. She had managed to gain access to the chamber despite security protocols, drawn by the same irresistible pull that had brought representatives from across the galaxy. The predecessors were artists as much as they were scientists, Maya realized, the hammer's knowledge filling gaps in her understanding. Everything they created was meant to inspire as well as function. They saw no separation between beauty and purpose. The probe came to rest just outside the Academy's hull, close enough that its geometric patterns could be seen in perfect detail. Maya felt a sudden shift in the hammer's energy, as if the weapon was responding to some signal from the ancient vessel. Something's happening, Professor Kim observed, pointing to readings on her portable scanner. Energy patterns around the Academy are changing. The probe is creating some kind of field effect. Maya felt it too, a gentle pulling sensation, as if the space around her was becoming fluid. The hammer in her hands grew warmer, its light brightening to match patterns flowing across the probe's hull. It wants me to come aboard, she realized. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. General Thexmar stepped forward, his massive form radiating protective instincts. Absolutely not. We cannot risk losing the only person who can communicate with these entities. You're not losing me, Maya said calmly. The hammer will maintain the connection no matter where I go. But, the probe has something to show me, something that can only be experienced directly. I forbid it, Admiral Kurdash declared over the communication system. As commander of Galactic Defense Forces, I cannot permit, with respect, Admiral, Maya interrupted, this isn't a military decision. The hammer has chosen me as a bridge between what we are and what we can become. I have to trust that choice, even if it means taking risks. She turned to address the assembled representatives, feeling the weight of history in the ancient weapon she carried. For millions of years, the predecessors have been patient. They've watched us grow, waited for us to develop the maturity needed for what they want to offer. But, patience has limits, even for beings who measure time in eras rather than years. The hammer pulsed with confirming light, and Maya felt knowledge flowing through her that made the scope of the moment crystal clear. This is our one chance, she continued. If we respond with fear, if we choose the safety of isolation over the risks of growth, the probes will return to the outer rim and wait for another million years. Our species will continue as they are, advancing slowly, but never reaching their full potential. And if you're wrong? Commander Thale asked. If this is a trap or a test we're destined to fail? Maya looked at the hammer in her hands, feeling its ancient wisdom flowing through her consciousness like a river of light. In that moment, she understood something fundamental about the predecessors and their legacy. Then, we fail as united peoples rather than as divided species, she said. And, that failure itself would be a kind of success. Without waiting for further argument, Maya walked toward the chamber's outer wall. As she approached, the Academy's hull began to shimmer and fade, revealing the probe's interior through a doorway that hadn't existed moments before. The predecessor technology made such things possible, manipulating spacetime as easily as opening a conventional portal.
Maya, wait, Professor Kim called out.
Maya paused at the threshold, looking back at the chamber full of beings who represented the galaxy's current state of evolution. Each species had brought their gifts to the galactic community, creating a diversity of capabilities that spanned the spectrum of existence. But they remained separate, cooperating while maintaining distinct boundaries that prevented true unity. "Take care of each other while I'm gone," she said. That's what the predecessors want to see, not individuals achieving greatness, but communities supporting each other through challenges. She stepped through the portal, feeling the hammer's warm presence intensifying as she entered the probe's interior. The doorway sealed behind her, leaving her alone in a space that defied every expectation she might have had. The probe's interior was vast, filled with flowing formations that seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy. Geometric patterns covered every surface, but they moved and changed constantly, creating a sense of being inside a living organism rather than a constructed vessel. At the center of the space waited a figure that took Maya's breath away. It was humanoid in general shape but composed entirely of light and possibility, its form shifting through configurations that suggested every species Maya had ever encountered. As she watched, it stabilized into something that resembled a synthesis of galactic diversity, the strength of a Brutarian, the grace of an Aquarian, the wisdom of a Saurian, all combined into something greater than the sum of its parts. "Welcome, Bridge Builder," the figure said, its voice carrying harmonics that spoke directly to Maya's soul. "We have waited long for one capable of understanding our gift." Maya felt the hammer resonating with the figure's presence, creating a connection that transcended physical proximity. "You're not just predecessors," she realized. "You're what the predecessors became when they achieved true unity." "Yes," the figure confirmed. "We learned to see beyond the boundaries of individual species, individual worlds, individual minds. We became a community of consciousness that spans the galaxy while preserving the unique gifts of each component." The space around them shifted, showing Maya visions of what the galaxy could become. She saw crystalline artists working with Aquarian philosophers to create works of impossible beauty. She watched Brutarian engineers collaborating with Saurian scientists to solve problems that had seemed insurmountable. She witnessed human diplomats helping former enemies find common ground through shared understanding. "This is what you want to offer us?" Maya asked. "It is what you have already begun to achieve," the figure replied. "The Academy, the galactic community, the cooperation that brought your species together despite their differences, these are the first steps toward what we became." "But something is missing," Maya said, understanding flowing through the hammer's connection. "Unity of purpose beyond survival," the figure confirmed. "Your species cooperate when faced with external threats, but they have not yet learned to see themselves as parts of a greater whole. They maintain their separateness even in collaboration." Maya thought of her fellow cadets, each brilliant in their own ways but limited by the boundaries of their species' perspectives. She remembered her own struggles at the Academy, feeling isolated by humanity's perceived weaknesses rather than valued for its unique contributions. "The hammer chose me because humans see the connections," she realized. "We understand that true strength comes from bringing others together, not from individual achievement." "Yes," the figure said, its form brightening with approval. "Your species lacks the obvious advantages that others possess, but you have developed something more valuable, the ability to recognize potential in others and help them achieve it." The vision shifted, showing Maya potential futures that branched out like rivers from the present moment. In some, the galaxy continued its current path of cautious cooperation, making slow progress while remaining fundamentally divided. In others, the species achieved something unprecedented, a unity that preserved diversity while creating capabilities that transcended any single race's limitations. "What happens if we accept your gift?" Maya asked. "You become more than you are while remaining who you are," the figure explained. "Each species keeps its unique gifts, but those gifts become part of a greater symphony. Individuals maintain their identity, but that identity expands to include connection with the whole." Maya felt the truth of those words resonating through the hammer's ancient metal. The weapon wasn't just a test or a key, it was a bridge between what the predecessors had been and what the younger races could become.
I understand, she said quietly. But, the decision can't be mine alone.
No, the figure agreed. It must be made by all, freely and, with full understanding of what they choose.
That is why the hammer chose a bridge builder rather than a conqueror.
You will help them see what is possible, not force them to accept it. The space around them began to shift again, and Maya felt herself being drawn back toward the portal that would return her to the academy. But, before she left, the figure extended one hand toward her, light flowing from its palm to envelope the hammer she carried. The weapon is yours now, truly yours, the figure said. Use it to show others what unity looks like. Help them understand that their differences are gifts to be shared, not barriers to be overcome. Maya felt new knowledge flowing into the hammer, concepts and possibilities that would take years to fully explore. But, at its core was a simple truth that she could share immediately, that the galaxy's future depended not on any single species achieving dominance, but on all species learning to see their shared potential. She stepped back through the portal into the Academy's central chamber, where anxious faces turned toward her with desperate hope. The hammer in her hands now glowed with steady light that seemed to embrace everyone in its warmth.
Well? Professor Kim asked urgently. What did they want?
Maya smiled, feeling the weight of the hammer and the lightness of possibility combining in perfect balance. They want to teach us how to become more than we ever imagined, she said. But, first, we have to decide if we're ready to learn. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of worlds looked at each other with new understanding.
The test wasn't over, it was just beginning.
But, for the first time in galactic history, they faced it not as separate species competing for advantage, but as members of a community discovering what they could accomplish together. Maya Chen, the human who had been ranked last in her class, stood at the center of a transformation that would reshape the meaning of civilization itself. And, in her hands, the hammer of Ethon pulsed with the promise of everything the galaxy could become.